Hello, everybody. It's me, Tammy Devine, again. We are back with part two of Cynthia T's amazing testimony. Wow, the things that we have already heard about her story would be enough to just make people want to give up. I think make anybody want to give up. But God was good to her, and God gave her a story, and she is willing to share it. Um, Hopefully as a way to really inspire everyone out there that God is good no matter what you're going through, no matter the horrible thing that just happened in your life, that God is still good. He has his reasons for allowing us to go through the situations that we have been through, and hopefully we'll come out refined and stronger as we go through those trials and tribulations. And we know that the word says that we can take heart, though, because Christ has overcome the world. So here we go with part two of Cynthia T's amazing testimony. Here we are, Cynthia T. Thank you so much, Cynthia, for joining us. You, yeah, we left you at kind of a tough spot in part one. And I'd love for you
Mhm.
to kind of give us a recap of what we heard in part two and where we left off as well.
Sure. So, in part one, we talked about kind of what started my Job story, as I call it, where in 2015 I had become very ill. And leading into the year 2017 in February, where my children were illegally and wrongfully kidnapped by my mother and also Child Protective Services. And so I believe I finished off with being living in a nursing home and trying to figure out how to go about making my visits because at that point in time, my visits were actually at the nursing home, but my mother had told the social workers, and I don't remember if it was the judge as well, but that she refused to handle my visitations. And now this ill mother. And also, I don't know if you've ever had to deal with a nursing home, but you can't just up and leave. You are, um, I
Kind of
don't
like
want to.
a ward, you're a ward of the state
Yes,
here.
yes. I
Mhm.
mean, in a sense, yes, because if something happens to you outside of their care, it's on them. So trying to, cooperate with their, rules and everything, but then also never missing a visit was very difficult. And I know I ended with my daughter's birthday because that day was very hard.
Yeah, and I think, let me see if I can find that. I think this was it right here
Yes.
was what we ended up. This room with the ball pit right here was where they would allow you to. That is a tiny room to just have visitations at that time, and
Yeah,
then
this was the monitored visit. So the picture next to it is actually the nursing home. And that was my last visit with my children there. You can see there's a older gentleman in the back. He was my kids loved him. He would let them like shave his beard. The older people loved seeing my kids. I do have to say that. They would when they would come, even after I left there and I finally got my kids back, we would go visit those people.
Mhm.
Um, and this is my kids before. I wanted to add these pictures to show like how happy my kids were and
Mhm.
the smiles on their faces because as we go into my story, you'll see a complete change in their face. Like how bright my daughter is right here.
Mhm.
Her skin is clear. As we go and the depression and everything sets in with my children, her eyes get sunken in
Mm.
and super black circles around her eyes. They just deteriorate.
Mhm.
And I just did a show on Saturday with another mom about our stories and how our children, when they're removed like this from their parents, deteriorate completely.
Mm.
Um, their health,
Yeah, that
their mental status.
yeah, that does sound like a whole story in and of itself. I want to show also real fast these pictures. I had wanted to show them in part one, but here we are in part two, and this shows talk about what these are.
So, as I had said in part one, I my first well, I've had other surgeries prior to 2015. Actually, I've had quite a few, but in the beginning of 2015, I was cut from the top, the bottom of my my breast area, all the way down to my pelvic area, cut wide open, and then I had these tubes placed. And at this time, it looks like I've had these tubes already for a couple years, and they
Mm.
had been moved around my stomach. And these are literally the tubes I survived off of. So the long one sticking down is my G tube, and that would empty anything by mouth. So any food or drink that I would eat or drink, it would come out into a bag, not a
Mhm.
colostomy bag because that's equivalent to like stool, which it is stool. A
Mhm.
G tube bag is equivalent to like throwing everything up, and that's essentially what is happening. I'm eating and drinking and it's emptying out of a tube into a bag.
How
And
does
then the other tube,
the body actually get the nutrition then from the food?
right, so the little tube next to it, it's called a Mickey tube, and it's right there. It's just like a little stump. I could hook a longer tube into it, and that would be my formula and hydration and medication through there. And that goes into my small intestines.
Wow.
And then the picture to the left is me, which people don't ever believe me. I have to actually zoom in and show them the tattoos on my arm because they said, well, this looks like a child. And I'm like, nope, that is me. And I happen to be in the ICU on hospice at that time. Hospice.
Again, just for the viewers, hospice is end of life care, right?
Right. So it's where they've officially given you a time frame of how long you're going to be able to live.
Yeah,
And
a terminal diagnosis. That means they expect you're going to die.
correct. And at this point in time, I think I was given like 6 weeks. And I was in there because I was in septic shock as well. And nothing at the time was working. I was emaciated, which is being super thin and like hollowed out with no nutrition. Like my body was not absorbing any of the nutrition given to me, even through my port for TPN, which is the total nutrition through a portacath, like a vein.
Mhm.
Um, Nothing was working. So that's
Mm.
that picture.
Wow, that's just unbelievable. And so, just so many trials, so many tribulations. I think in part one, we also talked about your husband had left at this point, right?
So actually that picture with me in the hospice care, that was actually 1 month prior to my children being taken
Okay.
and from my mom. And also, at that point in time I had found out my husband had been using meth, which I know people are like, how did you not notice? I was sick and dying.
Yeah.
So I did not notice. I noticed that he got super skinny and stuff, but I had no idea. I was out of it most of the time, unfortunately. Um, but yeah, he had gotten hooked on meth and then he had built these guns. I think we talked a little bit about that, and he had wanted to end mine and my children's lives and himself. So it would have been a homicide suicide situation. So
Wow.
he ended up getting arrested. Because when we called 911 on him the day that he had threatened to kill us, he had hid all these guns, and because they're not registered, so we talked about that. He was able to build these guns from buying parts, which is not illegal apparently, but it is to build them. Um, and that's what he did. And when the police came, he had hid the guns off of our property, so I had no idea where they were, and the cops could do nothing. But after I had been in the hospital and he came and told me, he found somebody else and was going to make it work with her, I went to the house to get my things, and the safe was wide open,
The
and the guns were there,
the
and
gun
I
safe, right? You're talking about?
correct. Which we had a safe for other reasons, not because we had guns, but it was a gun safe. Um, and so the guns were actually in there with the door wide open, and I just took a picture and I had showed the officer, and then it went into a raid. Um, it's crazy because I was recently talking to somebody who was defending him. I'm not going to say who it is or anything, but she said how horrible I was that I would sign a affidavit, which I don't believe I did sign anything, but to put him in jail as if I have control over that. Number one, this is a felon who built these guns to do one thing. It was not to protect our home. He was using drugs while building these, and he had a purpose. And so um I am not a vindictive person. I was not trying to just put my husband of 12 years in prison because I didn't want him around anymore, but I was also scared for mine and my children's lives after he threatened to kill us. And um so again, it wasn't to be vindictive, but it was to protect us. And the crazy part is, even after being a felon for attempt murder and assault with a deadly weapon as a young adult, he only faced 1 week in jail time and got off on probation. And then has spent lots of time, retaliating in anger at me for telling the police. And it's been 8 years now, and he's still angry.
Well, and the thing is, like with the person defending him, like nobody knows until they're in a situation like that. There's no way to understand. And, you know, looking at it from the outside, like what, as a mom, what are you going to do? You're going to do everything you can to protect the lives of your children. And if you think there's some sort of threat, you have to act on it.
It wasn't like he was just saying, I'm going to kill you. He did the ultimate action of building. He didn't even just buy a gun, and he didn't build and buy just one gun. You saw how many guns were in that picture. Those were his guns. That is our report that was in the newspapers that he was arrested for. Homemade assault rifles, and apparently he had been growing weed. You have to remember, I was living out of the house already at this time. So I guess when they had gone there, actually, as a matter of fact, when I showed up to get my belongings, he had the windows boarded off. We had a gorgeous farmhouse, by the way. Uh, Customized furniture, all of that had been sold. Our boat, our trailer sold, and the house looked like a bunch of homeless people had been living in it. There were tarps everywhere. This is the home we were raising our kids in.
Mm,
Alcohol bottles, Jack Daniels everywhere. It
wow.
it looked like a meth house. It was scary. And then he had a whole backyard full of weed plants and pots.
Wow. And so, what happened after that? Because you're not only sick, like deathly ill, you're husband has decided he wants to run off with somebody else, and
Mhm.
and he's threatening the lives of you and your children. I mean, and it still gets worse, right?
Right. So, I've looked at a couple things, by the way, like devil's advocate, right? And the situation with CPS, because my current husband, who's amazing, has, we've literally broken this down. So I can understand why CPS would think that they need to protect these children, and take them away from the situation. But I want to remind people, number one, I had already taken them. I had tried going to shelters and everything. I was not keeping them in this environment. I was doing whatever I could to protect them. I was not participating in it, nothing. Yes, I was ill, but again, I was a safe place for my children. And, then we go to the fact that I become homeless and I'm living in a nursing home. Again, that was because my mother took my children. And when the judge said I could live there with them and they denied me of that, why not help me find housing? Help me get into a place where I can live with my children. If you want to, then,
Let's
you
clarify
know,
that a little bit. You said
sure,
the judge took your children and gave them to your parents at that point. You could live with them. The
correct,
judge said you could live with them, but
correct.
it was your parents that denied you the ability to
The,
live with them, right?
correct. 100%. And it blew me away because in the beginning of the case, again, CPS didn't come and kidnap my kids. My mother did. She took them from a safe place. They were supposed to go with my friends where nobody knew where they lived. And this is friends from elementary school, by the way, where they are very stable, have a beautiful home, have their own kids, and they were stepping in to protect me and my children. But unfortunately, as I mentioned, they lived in the mountains. My tube exploded, expanded and exploded in size. So I had to go to the hospital to have surgery. That's where my mother takes my kids. And then she goes to her house. CPS comes and approves it for foster care, approves her as foster parent, and gives her guardianship over my children. Then we go to the courtroom, and the judge then says, Mother is safe. She seems completely stable and she can be with her children, but while we're still doing this court thing, let's keep her with her parents and everybody can just live there. And my parents had even given permission for me to live there. But then during that court hearing, they said, you know what? We decided that's not a good idea. She's crazy.
Wow. And what would make your mom say you're crazy?
Honestly, my it all came down to my mom wanting my kids as hers. As I don't know if I mentioned, but she was uh, told them they had to call her mom.
Oh, wow. Really?
And I don't know if I have already mentioned. Um, I don't think I have actually.
It's
That
okay. Talk to us as if it's the first time. It's
all
okay.
right. So during a visit, as you've seen in that room, there's somebody sitting there taking notes. I don't know if I think I sent you a picture. It's me and the two kids, and there's a person behind us. She's to the like left of my shoulder, and she's like looking on her phone, and it's in that room. Well, anyways, in one of my visits with my children, so this is jumping forward in the timeline, but during the case, I told my son, "You're such a mama's boy," and he said, "No, I'm mom's boy." And you can't argue with your kids. You can't, um, you know, give facts or straighten them out. You can't do any of that. You can't talk about the case. You can't talk about the future. You can't even talk about your next visit with them. Everything is this moment only. So I said, well, you can be both of our boys, mama's boy and mom's boy, because I can't correct him. And he said, no, I'm only mom's boy. I came from her tummy, and I, in his ways and his words, explained that he breastfed off of her. and
Whoa.
that she told him this information. And
Wow.
yes, and I looked at the person monitoring my visit because they take notes. It's being video recorded and audio. I said, "Did you catch that?" She said, "Yes, it'll be in my report." So
Unbelievable.
I, the whole time, like in my story, so we even were assigned by the judge to go to counseling, my mother and I. And I'll never forget the first week we went in there, and this therapist did not trust me, believe me. He was literally on my mother's side. But that changed really fast when he would ask my mom questions about me, like, what is your guys' emotional relationship like? And my mom would say, she's just a habitual liar. We can't have a relationship. She's a habitual liar. That's all she would say in response. And so the first week, he's very much on her side. But then when we go to the second week and he's asking questions and she's just repeating that, that's all she would say about me. He started figuring out, like, this woman is not trying at all to participate in reunifying her children with the mother. And when he asked, what is your guys' emotional relationship like? My mom couldn't answer the question. Her response was, well, I used to take her places all the time and I would buy her whatever she wanted. So she always had everything.
Wow.
And I said, no, mom, he's asking what our like mental connection is. Like, I can answer that for me and my daughter.
Mhm.
Like the fact that I have an open, safe space for her. She's able to share any and everything, even if it's bad about me, where I can't get upset. We have this communication level that's, I pray, never goes away. As, again, safe place. Like, there's an emotional connection between my daughter and I. My mom and I, no.
Mm.
And I'll even share really fast. I have updated information where I've recently seen my mom after all of this. And it 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 was sad. My mom wouldn't say one word to me. She didn't acknowledge me, and that blew me away because I don't, being a mom myself, I cannot imagine looking at my kids and them not existing.
Was there ever an official diagnosis for her or?
So my therapist said, and he felt confident in saying after her being around, this is my therapist that the social workers sent me to for um, parenting classes and individual therapy that you have to go to. And he definitely said that my mom had Munchausen's by proxy, um, which is doesn't identify why she is the way she is with me. Um, but she was caught giving my daughter high doses of medication,
Wow.
basically drugging my daughter, which then clarified a lot of my health issues as to how I could have this many issues because they were all diagnosis as idiopathic, which is we have no idea why your whole body just shut down.
Wow. Wow. Oh my goodness. And so during this time, you're fighting now to, even through your health issues, to
Mhm.
get your kids back home to you. Where are you living? Like how
Okay, so I want to share that I was on probably like 30 medications
wow.
being ill. No joke. We had a tackle box. When all of this happened and I found out, because by the way, I was a regular person, had no idea what life dealing with CPS was like. It's not like what people think. Oh, they're there to protect the children.
Mm.
It's very much not that way.
Mhm.
It's
That's what
a
it's supposed to be, protect, right? Child
it's
protective services, and that's what you think they're going to do, and
it's
that's just
actually
not always the case.
it's a billion-dollar industry, and the social workers get incentives for every child they remove from the parent, for every child that's placed in foster care, for every child who gets adopted, and who ages out of the system.
Wow.
all those incentives. So
So
they take kids.
trying to take a
Correct.
child, and sometimes maybe the motive behind taking that child isn't necessarily to protect the child.
Correct. So on top of that, my mother had money. I did not. Um, so anyways, at this time, I brought up my medications for a reason. When I found out everything that's going on and like figured it out, I chose to literally cold turkey cut off all my medications. My doctors were not on board with that, but being that I was accused of being a drug addict, I'm accused of overusing medications, even though I had proof, even though it was dismissed right away because all of my doctors came forward and stood as like this barrier. It was amazing to see all my doctors come forward from every hospital that I visited and seen, and they came forth and said, this, this woman is not overusing. She is not a drug addict, never has been, never has been on any drugs. The pharmacies came forward for me and were writing statements. It was amazing to see that.
Wow.
So my case, or my charges of being an addict and stuff, were dismissed immediately. Um, so I obviously lived past my expiration date that the hospital gave. So I was no longer on hospice. Stopped taking all of my medications at that point. And like I said, I was moved into a nursing home. I was living there for 6 weeks, and primarily because they couldn't let me be homeless. The reason I was cut off at 6 weeks was I had a nurse that told my insurance that I was capable of taking care of myself, which I was, but still on paper needed help. I
Mhm.
was still very ill at the time. I mean, I still am literally on paper very ill. Um, and on my visit to celebrate my daughter's birthday, this insurance person walks in and says, I have less than a week to find a place to live.
Wow.
I have no family that's talking to me. My case has now been open for 9 weeks. No friends that are talking to me because all of my friends think, people, the society thinks, well, if CPS is in your life, then they're there for a reason. You must have done something to
Mhm.
have your kids taken away.
Mhm.
Um, which again isn't the case. And so I had nowhere to go. And I go to my daughter's visit, like I literally pray and I'm like, God, I just need to focus on my kid today. I need to celebrate her and I need to not worry about anything else. I trust that you're going to have a place for me to go. And I enjoy my daughter's birthday. We celebrate. I think she had turned 7. I think she turned 7 that birthday. And it was a great day. It was a great day. So I come, oh, these are them now. That's
Okay. This is early, or this is newer
Yeah,
pictures.
this is recent.
Okay.
So my daughter's now 13. These are also when I got my kids back.
Okay.
I wanted to show how our lives were after I got them back, how happier, and you'll see my kids from deteriorating to getting back healthy when they were placed back with me. I have people that they witnessed the whole thing, and they even said my kids would not smile hardly.
Mhm.
Just everything about them changed when they were living at my parents'.
Mhm.
This is in the nursing home as well. So you can see I had a Hickman in one picture, which is a tube that comes out of your chest and it's permanently like that. And then I had a PICC line in my arm. So I think my son was being like my nurse in that visit.
Mm.
Um, but anyways, back to living at the nursing home and being kicked out.
Mhm.
This woman walks into my room holding 2 coffees and she opens the door and I was like, I think you have the wrong room. And she said, are you Cynthia? And I said, yes. And she says, I'm in the right room. And I said, I don't know you. At least I don't think I do. And she said, I heard about you and I heard about your situation. And God told me to prepare a room for you at my house, and so I did. And I don't know what your situation is, but you're going to come home with me.
Wow. Just out of the blue? Did you have any idea? You didn't know
No,
who it was at
no,
all?
nothing. So what happened was, and I just found this out, by the way,
Really?
I just found this out last year, how this woman heard about me. She wouldn't tell me. So she ironically is one of my friend's moms, but my friend never told her. So
Oh,
my friend had posted something on Facebook, and her sister, which lives in Florida, then called her mom. This is what I heard. I don't know the accuracy of any of this, but said, this woman needs prayer. So being obedient in prayer, this woman opens up her house. Never met her, never heard about her. And now she's like my mom. Like, she was there at my wedding in my room with me, getting ready and everything.
wow.
Just such a part of my life.
And this is how God works, right? He works through
Absolutely.
people.
And she did more for me than just open her house. So when I move in, oh, which by the way, she had no bed for me, nothing. Everything that day, like I'm telling you, and people say, I don't know if God exists. There's no denying him in my life. All of a sudden that day, some other person provides a bed, calls me up and says, hey, I happen to have this day bed. Had no idea what was going on in my life. Just random person. Knew my kids were getting older, thought my daughter could use it. Had no idea what was going on. And I said, actually, I can use it. He delivered it to her house because she didn't have a truck.
Wow.
It was just amazing how God just did everything.
That's awesome. Okay, and so
So,
this is the beginning of getting things back on track, right?
yep, this is when this was the most broken, because I was finally able to, in the nursing home, I was distracted. Of course, I felt the pain, but in a sense, I was still needed. I was holding Bible studies in my room, and, the old people needed me. They loved me. And so I was being used. But when I was put into this home with, I don't want to say her name just out of privacy, with this woman, she worked. So I was alone in silence.
Mm.
And I felt the pain. And it was also when my ex-husband was arrested and put into prison, into jail. That people, it broke me because he was my, he was half of me. When you're married, when you go through those vows, you mean it. I meant it.
Yeah.
And so it broke. I felt like a part of me was going to jail.
Mm.
And he was so angry with me, which hurt even more. And then I found out, his girlfriend bailed him out.
Mm.
The whole thing was just heartbreaking. On top of not having my kids. At this point in time, my mom had canceled my phone calls and Zoom appointments. So I
Mm.
couldn't see my kids. I can only see them once a week for 2 hours supervised.
Wow.
And I'll never forget. So what I just said, that this woman did more for me than open her doors, right? I mean, obviously by listening to God and opening her house, that was being obedient. But on top of that, she fed me the word every day. So, one morning I went into her room. I did every morning, as a matter of fact, just sobbing. I would wake up sobbing. And I'll never forget, she was laying in her bed, and I bang on the door, and I open the door, and she's like, you know what? I'm not getting on your carousel of emotions anymore. It needs to stop.
Mm.
And I'm like, how do I stop having emotions of my life falling apart? She goes, you do. You give it to God every day. You need to figure out how to put it at your door. When you come out that door, it's gotta, you need to figure out your life, because nothing is going to go back to how it was.
Mhm.
You need to figure out your health. You need to figure out this. I mean, I had a lot of things I needed to put in order
Mhm.
because I was going to be a single mom, you know. I was hoping and praying I was going to get my kids back. Um, so I wrote a piece of paper and I drew, I don't remember what I drew on there, but I wrote, leave it here. And so every day I'd leave it there. So I was able to go out and not be emotional. And, and then she said, you need to start putting on makeup again. You need to be presentable. Stop slumping around this house. And then she got out her art stuff. And, you need to be doing something. You need to get out of your head. And just every day, then she'd bring home Bible studies for me. I need you to finish this. But then she taught me how to do it. Because she'd bring it home and I would do it in one day. And she's like, this is a week's worth. But all my answers were correct, She's like, no, you're not. She taught me how to really chew on the word.
Now, I
I'd
think
been
let's just pause there for a minute because I think that is so important for people to realize, for us women and moms to realize, is that one of the things she said, you got to get your emotions in check, right? I think that is such an important key. I remember growing up in my family, my mom would not ever let us just keep going on and on and on, crying and being upset when bad things were happening. She would be like, "Okay, you need to go somewhere and get yourself together, and then come and talk to me." You know.
And I
And
want to clarify that I still had a safe place to be emotional, but
yeah,
like you said, it was to get my emotions in check. Okay, if I sit here and cry about it every day, well, what's going to happen? Nothing. I'm going to sit there and cry about it tomorrow.
exactly. And what kind of example does that set for our children as well, right? If our emotions are all over the place all the time, they think that's normal and then that's how they behave, right? So it's so key. I think that was such a gift that that woman gave you to get your emotions together. Now, I'm not saying like we as women, we're more emotional than men, and that's okay. That's allowed. This is
Right.
how God made us, how God designed us, and it's okay. But to be out of control, emotional, freaking out over everything all the time is
That was me.
yeah, and everyone I think could acknowledge that you had every right to be upset, but you had to get yourself together. And this woman, and not only was she helping you in controlling your emotions, she was discipling you. And
Hmm.
discipleship, I think, is a lost art now of the church at times, of some churches and of some Christians, is that we need to take people who are younger than us, maybe not numerically even, but younger than us in the faith, and work with them and teach them and train them and disciple them, teach them how to be disciples of Christ, to help them mature in the faith.
Right. And I just I forgot what I was going to say and then I remembered it. I want to explain why I was also chaos in my head. I never, one couple things that I was not taught as a child was, like you just said, what are we teaching our kids, right? I was never taught how to control my emotions because there really wasn't emotions allowed in the house at my home growing up.
Mm,
If you did cry, you did go do it over there. It
mm,
wasn't like accepted to like, let's sit through your feelings, but now let's figure it out. No,
mhm,
it was go over there.
mhm,
And that's again when I say an emotional connection with my daughter is okay, let's cry about it for a minute, let's feel it, but
mhm.
now let's figure out how we can make a change. And I wasn't taught that.
Right.
And likely or similarly with the Bible study, I was never taught how to have a relationship with God. I was told, he's this mean and consequential parent of ours, and that's because
Mhm.
that's what my mom was. And he wasn't this, come here and let's do this together. Cry
Mhm.
on my shoulder. Again, cry with me. Feel it, but then let's figure this out together. No, it's you got to do it on your own. And so that was another thing she taught me was, I'll never forget, you need to chew on it. What does that mean, chew on it? I remember I'd be so frustrated because I was doing the study. I was writing the answers down, but I wasn't actually building my relationship with God. I wasn't listening. I wasn't
It was head knowledge and
right.
hadn't translated to the heart yet to
Correct.
be able to
Yep.
apply regular everyday life.
So I learned to in this home. I learned to have a good relationship, a trusting, safe relationship with my Father in heaven. And especially because I needed a parent at that time. Both of my parents took my children. They
Mm.
wanted nothing to do with me. That's the other thing that was so heartbreaking for me and still is. It's so hard to understand how my parents don't want anything to do with me. And even more so, I would tell people, let's pretend I did everything that they accused me of, that I was a drug addict. Doesn't it say in the Bible that you are to be like there for your children? You don't have to support this addiction or this problem, but aren't you supposed to still be this loving, safe parent to um again love on your children and be there for them and help them through those situations? Like,
Yeah,
am I wrong in saying
provide
that?
yeah, not at all. And providing wisdom for your children, right? And this is something that I really appreciated about my parents. And to clarify, my parents or my mom wasn't like go over there and have your emotions. It was don't keep going on and on and on with your emotions, right?
Right. I
Um,
understood.
but yeah, absolutely. Your parents are supposed to be there. And one thing I really appreciated about them was that um, they did not get too horribly involved with my adult life, right? But they were always there when I needed to get wisdom and understanding in something, right? As I was growing and maturing. And to not have that would have been really tough, like in your situation.
You know, mm, one of the biggest struggles was literally going through the hardest thing I've ever had to deal with and not have my mom or dad there. And I needed them. And I'll never forget. I have proof of messages, text messages, Facebook messages, begging my mom, please be here for me. Please, I need you. Like, okay, if you really feel like you're protecting my kids, that's fine, but I need you. I need a relationship with you. I need help in this moment. And again, it wasn't help to get off of something or, because I had dug myself a ditch. No, it was my life is collapsing around me. And not only are you not there for me, but you're a part of it. You're burying me in this hole that you dug for me or
Wow.
that, my ex created. Whatever it is, you weren't there to take the weight off. You were there to put the weight on.
Mm.
And it even furthers into, so we grew up at a specific church, which I'm not going to mention because everybody will know it. To the point where my mom even did all the pastors and their wives' hair growing up. And
Well,
this is a known church around the world. And because we had moved away, I was not attending that church any longer. I was attending a church near home. And but when I moved back to the area that I grew up to be close to my kids, where my mom lived, I started going back to that church because one thing that all of this did not do is it did not shake my faith and my relationship with God. If anything, I thank this for all happening because it really connected me with the Lord in a different and deeper way. But so I went to this church, and the main pastor's wife came up to me and she was like, "Oh, Cynthia, I haven't seen you, and I'm so glad you came back to the church, and I'm so glad you're doing better." Pause. I'm stunned because she's referring to me being a drug addict and leaving God.
Wow.
I don't have time to like respond. And then she looks down and she goes, "Oh my gosh, what are those? What is that?" I said, "These are the tubes I live off of." And I had no idea. Oh my gosh, I can't believe it. As we discussed, she knows nothing about my health problems, nothing at all, but knows everything as to why my children aren't with me right now, and everything in my mom's version. And I do want to say, so this church supported my mother because, of course, I don't have my kids, so she must be telling the truth. I do want to say that after I did get my kids back, I went to an event that the church holds. So it wasn't at the church grounds because I did not want to go back there. But I went to an event, and a lot of them who saw me there came up and apologized. One of them,
Wow.
one of the wives ran like to chase after me because she saw me walk by, and then she had just had knee surgery, so she couldn't get up fast enough, but then literally was out of breath when she got to me, and she was crying. And she goes, "Cynthia, I am so sorry for not only but believing your mom, but for completely turning my back against you, because that is not what the church is called to do. God goes after the one."
That's right.
And
Amazing.
I was the one at that moment that everybody else turned their face against.
Wow. And all on one person's version of events.
Correct.
Oh, wow. Without directly contacting you or knowing the full story. They just
Or
turned.
even if you choose to believe it, how about, "Cynthia, I heard you're going through stuff. Let me pray with you. Let me take you to lunch. Let me help you through this." No,
Exactly.
nothing.
Okay, so
And
you're
by the way,
Mhm.
I just want to add, these people knew me. I wasn't a once a week goer. I would babysit for these pastors since I
Mm,
was 11 years old.
mm,
They've watched me grow up. They knew me, deeply knew me. I'd go to their houses. They would come to our houses. It was unbelievable.
heartbreaking. That's heartbreaking when your church isn't there to support you, and this is what churches are there for, to
But
feed
I
spiritual.
want to I want to say something about it because we're human though. Because when people say, "Well, this is why I don't go to church," this is why people hold humans at the same level as they would hold God. And
Mm,
that's where you're wrong right there.
mhm,
The church is made up of human beings, people who are human, and they're going to fail. They're
yeah,
going to do things wrong.
mhm,
That's where you go to God about it, but you cannot hold your faith and belief and relationship with the Lord off of what people do to you.
right.
I
That's
do want to add that.
Thank you for that. Okay, so let's buzz through the rest of the story and getting the kids back and all of that, because we have a lot more to talk about and we need to squeeze it all in. I think in about 25-ish more minutes. So
Okay.
um, you're at this woman's house. She's feeding you physically food. She's taking care of you physically, and she's helping you spiritually as well. And so, what happened after that?
Sure. So, unfortunately for her, but she gets called into a position of needing to take in a grandchild, and it's only a two-bedroom house. So I found somewhere else to go. It was a horrible place for me at that time, living with this other woman that was, anyways, it wasn't a great experience. Still maintaining my visits, still fighting for my kids, going to court, jumping through the court system really fast. When they decided to dismiss all the charges against me because I was able to prove them wrong, they had me sign a paper that says I was going to get my kids back, dismissal of charges, and kids returned. And this was within 3 months. However, what I didn't know, and I find out later, is they illegally had me sign away my parental rights.
So was that like buried in the fine print or something?
Nope, it was everything that they said was in code.
On the paper?
Correct. So,
Oh.
code 359, this is dismissing this charge. Code 586, this is this charge. And code 377, oh, we're going to return your kids. Sign here.
Oh. So then
And
what?
I did. And I did. So that's one thing I like to educate parents on is don't sign anything without an attorney.
And you had an attorney, right?
I didn't have an attorney yet. I had a court-appointed attorney, which is an attorney given to you. One second, I have to cough.
That's okay. And we'll go.
Okay.
Okay.
Sorry.
Next time I'll be a little faster on that draw.
So, anyways, so the court-appointed attorney is given to you by the judge or by the courtroom. Find out later that they actually are chosen by the social worker and the judge, so they are working against you. So it's very important that you hire an attorney, by the way, since I'm going to educate people too with this.
Right.
So anyways, I'm going through all these small print things, I'm going to counseling, parenting classes, domestic violence classes, all this stuff. I still only see my kids once a week for 2 hours. That was it. Very horrible for me and them. I want to just pause for a second and explain the horrific moments of leaving my kids every visit. I think I shared a little bit. You can't have emotion, none of that. My kids are squeezing my body, my face, my hair, my clothes. Don't leave me. Please, mommy, turn around. Please take us with you. It is the worst thing I have ever been through, by far. Every visit, I can't tell them, I'll see you next week. It's okay. I can't tell them anything. So we did finally come to a thing where what we would do, I sent you a picture, Tammy. We're all laying with our heads connected. And I took a picture like this. Every visit, we would lay on the ground right like 5 to 10 minutes before it ended. And we would find a place that we want to go. Disneyland, Alaska, Hawaii, whatever. And we would meet there in our dreams. So we would make sure we knew what we're going to wear, all of these details. And we would also pray together, obviously. But that final moment connected us to being able to live through the week of not being able to be together. So anyways, I'm going through the court process, and I get to the point where my mother claims that I'm crazy. So now, at this time, simultaneously, I find an attorney. Attorney Vincent Davis, he has this radio show, and he would have callers come on and share their stories, get advice. And I called and I shared my story. And again, a God moment. He said, call my office and make an appointment with me. So I did. And he said he wanted to meet me in person. So I did. I drove to LA. And I meet with him, and he says, I need this amount of money from you to represent you. And I'm like, I don't have a dollar to my name. And he said, well, do you have anybody that can help you? And he goes, just try and come back next week. And I was like, okay. I went to everybody at my church that I'm attending now, a different one. I asked everybody, could you please donate to this? Like, I need to get my kids back. Nobody would. This one man I happened to meet in Walmart, he said, I was buying gifts, and he blessed me. His name was Fred, and he passed away, unfortunately. But he paid for everything in my cart at that moment. And he even became a friend. Like, he was this older, like in his 80s, and he would even drive me to visits because I had nobody to take me. So like, God literally would constantly be putting people in my life to help me. my pride was out the door, humble as can be, don't have places to live. There was one point where I was literally homeless for a week, like homeless, living on pool furniture.
Mm.
Um, and then, rides, and then somebody blessed me with a car, and then another person blessed me with a better car. So then I'm able to donate that car to this person. Like God just was constantly there. And so this man paid for everything in my cart. And then a couple weeks later, we're talking, and I'm telling him I need money for an attorney. And he goes, "This is all I have in my account." He wrote a check for $100.
Oh.
That was like all he had at that moment because his SSI check hadn't come in yet. And I went back to the attorney that next week with the check, with his name for $100. I said, "This is all I got." And he said, "I'll take your case for $100.
Wow.
And slow, story or short story is he ended up not only taking my case for free, but he brought in like 5 experts. He paid for me to go to a psych eval, which is the MMPI, I believe that's what it's called, and it is a foolproof test where you fill in the bubble and they can diagnose any mental issue. Guess what I came back with?
Like 100%. Flying colors.
Anxiety.
Oh. Okay.
I'm not perfect, okay? But yes, no mental
It could have been a
issues.
lot worse.
Absolutely. Well, yeah, no kidding. I had anxiety. You took my kids from me. But that was a perfect score. It was perfect. There was nothing wrong with me. So that crazy allegation went right out the window. And by the way, I had it done from 3 different people. Even their psych eval they did from CPS, I passed that. So then Mr. Davis pays for a parent, a bonding coach to watch my visits. And my kids never knew he was there, but he watched how our bonding was so he could then report to court what our relationship looked like, and so Mr. Davis provided all of that for me, and I ended up getting non-unsupervised visits right away, and then overnights within like 2 weeks, and then weekends, and then I got this trial period of 30 days that my mom literally did everything she could to show that I was an unfit parent.
Wow.
Everything. And guess what? The judge kicked her out of the courtroom. He
Wow.
said, "So let me explain now, really fast, what happened and why God allowed all of this to happen." Because I prayed the entire time. I prayed for God to give me a reason, which he doesn't have to do, by the way. And normally he doesn't, show you why. But he did. He gave me the reason why he allowed all of this to happen. Number 1, I probably would have never left my marriage if I didn't go through all of this. I was too faithful and trying to be obedient, but to the point where I was not listening to God. And no, God does not like divorce, but he also doesn't like you to be unsafe. And I probably could have stayed there longer until something worse happened. Number 2, the judge put in place to where if something does ever happen to me, my parents could never fight for my children again. Which, by the way, that hasn't stopped them. My mom has taken this case to the district attorney of another county to try to reopen the case and reevaluate to try to get my kids back again. So my mother has not stopped. And so he put that in place, so that is still holding, and hopefully will hold the rest of my life, to where if something ever happens, my kids will be able to go with my current husband, and stuff like that. And then lastly, he gave me full custody of my children to be able to protect from their father. So when their dad is good and clean, he is welcome in their lives. I have opened every door for him to participate. That's on him whether he chooses to do it or not. And lastly, my favorite is God has already used me in so many ways. All the worst times, like when I'm sick, for example, even recently, I had to go to the hospital because I was ill again, and God had there was a woman that I like God like told me is like talk to her. And I started talking to her, and she tells me that she's there because she's an alcoholic and she's ready to end her life. And she tells me later in our conversation that if I wasn't there at that moment in time to talk to her, she was actually planning on leaving the hospital because she had already waited long enough.
Mm.
And she was ready to drive and go. She knew exactly where she was going to end her life, drive
Wow.
off of this specific cliff. Um, and she thanks me because we were able to pray together, and she said that I saved her life.
Oh,
And if I wasn't, number one, ill for God to use me, and number two, if I wasn't obedient to Him telling me I needed to speak to her, that woman wouldn't be here. And I'll never forget, like, I ended up passing her. So she got called back, and I passed her, and she just was so, grateful that I kept her there, kept her talking. And I shared, that God is there for her. And in this different way than she had seen God as well. So,
that's amazing. And how awesome that God showed you that these
yeah.
are good things that he can turn out of what the devil might want to use for evil. God can turn to good, right? As the scripture says.
Yes.
And he was able to show you the good that happened because of the terrible things that you went through. So, another great thing, you've talked about your now husband. I just want to show some pictures here. Um,
Yes. So
you're
I've known this man for 22 years. He fell in love with me when I was 15 and he was 18.
mm,
And I turned him down. My life would have been so different.
mm,
But luckily, God reunited us, and my best friend is now my husband, and my kids are in love with him. And man, talk about a man taking on a lot.
yeah.
He has taken on a lot because remember my kids have been through so much trauma. They're traumatized, and he has been there for them,
Mhm.
and he accepts them and loves them, and has just done way more than just marrying me.
That's awesome. And just all the things that he's been through with you guys already, like your sickness and your health issues, the trauma that you've been through, the trauma that your children have been through, and he's there with you through thick and thin. Now, I have to tease you a little bit, okay? Because like a lot of the pictures that I have of you,
Oh my gosh.
are you like doing the pouty kissy?
Okay, let me
And
explain.
then you have your hubby doing it too.
Okay, let me explain. My daughter started doing that.
Uh,
My daughter started doing that, like, I feel like when she was, like, 8. I don't remember. It was when I got her back. That was, like, her new thing. I'm not gonna smile anymore. I'm gonna do this. So you can see it everywhere in every picture. And so then we started doing it to make fun of her,
uh-huh.
and now we all do it because she does it. So
I love that so much.
that's why go back really fast.
To which
You
one?
notice that
This
go that one. You
uh,
notice in the top left, she's not doing it.
I know
Only
you
we
really
are
not doing it.
because we're making fun of her.
That is great. I love that so much. I love these pictures that you sent over. Thank you for those. Um, now, oh, let me just show this one here. I love these pictures here. Just
You know, he we were living in a very small apartment, me and my kids. I was a single mom for 5 years, and like I said, he took all of our baggage and was like, "It's mine now." And we're in a beautiful home. And we have a beautiful family, and our relationship has been put through the fire already.
Mhm.
But man, this man is willing to stand by my side no matter what.
That is so beautiful. And this is just another sign of how God can restore, right? And
Do you want to do you want to
mhm,
know what he got me for my birthday?
sure.
Because I've been begging. So we moved into our house. I don't know if you care that I get up to show you, but he printed on canvas. Okay. He printed on canvas all of my favorite like photos for me for my birthday.
Oh,
So like here's a mini one.
oh, look at that. That's
And then
beautiful.
I think my favorite part was that he specifically printed a picture just for him. So he said, "This one's for me." That's
Oh, that's beautiful. That's so awesome. Wow, what a
so
loving guy. Okay, we need to talk real fast because you need to go. We
yeah.
have like 5 more minutes, less than 5 minutes. But I want to talk about your tattoos and your marks because I think this is a big thing with the church, you know. And
Yeah.
I have to be honest, I'm like very conservative, very like, that's a lot of
Yeah.
kind of person myself, you know. But I think the Lord allows us to all kind of express ourselves in different ways, and there's meaning behind all the ink, having to do with a lot of the trials and tribulations that you've been through, huh? Can you talk?
Every one of my tattoos is been a part of my life. So um these are my children's birth flowers, which aren't that important, I mean, they're important to me, but they aren't like that big of a deal. But then you can see on my right side of my body, okay, so there's a ship and a storm, and then you can see the anchor
Mm,
and then the lighthouse. And
mhm,
then I have the verse Matthew 8:26. Sorry, I was like, that's not right, but it is. And that's the story of when they're in the ship and they're going through this storm, and they call out to Jesus like, save us, and he's like, man, you guys, do you not have faith? Like, what is going on? Like,
oh, me of little faith. Uh-huh.
I'm right here. So this is me through my storm, and Jesus has always been the light and my anchor.
Mm,
So, and then I even have on I don't know if you can see, I'm like trying to hold, but it's all awkward. I
mhm.
have the heart, and it's connected to an anchor and then a cross, and that's,
Show it again. The heart and the anchor and the cross.
can you see it right there?
Yep. Okay, can see it. Yep. The heart, anchor, and cross. Uh-huh.
And then I have the crown, and it's child of the one true King. And then I have on my wrist, rescued by Jesus, surrendered to Christ.
Can you
So
show?
then when I hold,
Okay.
oops,
Okay.
and then Christ on this side, surrendered to Christ. So then when they're together, it says Jesus Christ across my wrist. And then my kids wrote me love letters on my arm right there. As soon as I got them back, I had their handwriting printed on my arm.
Mm,
On my leg, I have a male lion with a crown, and I have this cross that's in my house, that they printed on my body as well, to just, it's such a, to me, I hold the cross so dear.
mm.
And this cross has like words on it, so they printed this on my leg next to the
Wow.
lion.
Wow.
And it's such an opening to be able to share the resurrection story with people, and what Jesus went through for us.
Mhm.
So yeah, those are my tattoos. They're pretty much over my body everywhere.
Well, that's beautiful. And I know that there are some of us that maybe like, oh, why are we marking up our bodies, the temple of the Holy Spirit, and all that? But you know what? There are some cultural changes that happen throughout time that I don't think has to do with the salvation of our soul. You know what I mean? So
Right. And
let's keep the main thing within the
well,
church.
and you know what else, Tammy, is the world, especially with phones and stuff, has turned into such a non-communication world. Like, people don't talk anymore. You don't walk up and say, "Hi, how are you?" I mean, I try to, but people think I'm weird. Um, but it's my tattoos are honestly such a communication piece for people. Even if it's in a negative way, like, "Oh, why did you tattoo yourself?" You know what the Bible says about that, right? um I do. And I'm not trying to like justify it, but I can tell you and promise you that God uses it.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And he can use anything. And so, so your struggles aren't over. There are some issues that are hard that you're dealing with, including your illness, including, you know, other things.
yeah,
But I think what you've done today and with your testimony is really given hope to people who are going through it. I think you have just dealt with some of the hardest things that anybody could ever have to deal with, and you've come out stronger. Your faith is stronger, and you're an inspiration. And I'm so glad that you shared your story with us, Cynthia.
thank you. Thank you for allowing me to share my testimony.
Yeah. And some real quick news before we go. Cynthia, the minute I talked to you about Divine Family Entertainment, you were like, I get it. I'm on board. I'm in. Tell me what I need to do. And I love that. It's so exciting when people get the vision that the Lord has placed on my heart for Divine Family Entertainment. And so, one of the things that you're going to be doing for DFE is hosting shows. You're going to host shows for DFE. And I'm so
Yes,
excited about that, including this show, My Amazing Testimony. My face is all over everything right now, and it just doesn't need to be. Like, I want to share the spotlight and give the spotlight over most
yep,
times. And so I'm excited that you'll be the host for My Amazing Testimony. I'm so excited about that.
me
Thank you
too.
willingness to do that.
Absolutely.
Do you have some thoughts real fast?
Oh,
I think we
I
need.
I have to go unfortunately.
Okay.
But I'm super excited and I definitely feel God calling me to do this. So, I'm excited. Can't wait to work with you.
Awesome. Me either. Thank you, my friend. God bless you. Thanks for sharing your story, and we'll talk soon.
Bye.
Okay.